Hello and welcome to the Rangers Rabble exclusive interview with Stephen Kelly. We're just going to go through Stephen's time at Rangers and discuss different things about his loan spells and what he's hoping to do next season. So how's it going, Stephen, mate? You all right?
Aye, all good. Yourself?
Aye, okay, mate. Right, straight into it, because I'm sure people would rather listen to you than listen to me. So how did you end up at Rangers?
I'd just been scouted playing. I think I was playing for St Mirren in the Boys Club League when I must have been 7 or 8. And I played for the Port Juniors as well. So we'd just been sort of scouted from that age.
And so what happened at that point, mate? Did you just like sort of stay there year to year, or was that just something that you wanted to kind of grow into?
Initially, you went there. It was like once every Thursday.
Right.
There was a training camp. The closest one for me was in Largs. Then you sort of went there for a period of time, and then you then get invited like to the big development days they would have on a Saturday for all the sort of boys the same age, and it would just be like games, mixed teams from boys from all over Scotland, and then just sort of go from that, and then into training and stuff, and then it just sort of picked up from there.
Was there any of the boys in that same group as you that ended up signing for Rangers at all?
Big Mayo, Jack
all right.
Thompson, all of them sort of, they would have been in at the development days at the same time as me, so
that's actually pretty impressive there, isn't it, to have 3 guys potentially out of that group that have went on to have a pretty decent start to their career. I suppose it shows you that these things actually do work and you can actually pick up, talented young lads even at that young age.
Aye, definitely.
So what happened when you were 16? Did you have any other offers, like to go anywhere else, or was Rangers always your first option?
No, it was always sort of only option. Obviously, I was a Rangers fan, so I wasn't really looking to sort of go anywhere else. And then when you're that age to sign for Rangers, it's obviously some people will argue about the old firm, but it's the best. It's the best thing you can do at that age.
I think that was actually the first time I seen you play. Was when I think you played for the 16s around about that point. Was I right in saying I think it was you and Jordan Houst and Jack Thompson that was in that team quite regularly?
Aye, Housty, Jack, me, Big Zach. I think if there's anybody else still there. Matthew Shields that's just left. There was quite a lot of us sort of come through since we were since we were young, sort of right through to the reserves.
Because Zach was quite freakish, wasn't he? Did he not get moved into the reserves or something like that when he was like 15 or 16? So he never really played that many games at 16 and 18s level, didn't he not?
There was a few of them that would normally sort of go and play with the older boys. I was a wee bit later, obviously, because I was just physically a bit behind them at that time.
Yeah.
But it's just natural.
No, I think that was the thing. Obviously, even seeing you at that age, you were obviously quite small, but you could see the technical ability was there. Whereas with some of the other guys that were a bit, kind of more physical, more impactful in the game because of their size. But I think it was interesting. I was listening to the seminar there with Craig Mulholland, and he was actually talking about you, and they were talking about how players can be quite small at a certain age, but they'll develop kind of later on in the game, and they'll build up muscle and size. Is that just something you've always believed, that your ability would get you to that level?
Well, obviously, football growing up, you just think of football and your ability. It was probably when I was kind of sort of 17, 18 that you start to realise you needed to sort of enhance your game. I never ever felt though that it was an issue.
Right.
Maybe some coaches and stuff along the way maybe felt we don't know a bit wee, but for me personally, like playing and training, it never felt like an issue to me. I always thought once I got it, it would help me a lot, but I didn't think it sort of held me back, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, just moving on to the next thing, I was really surprised. I know we'd spoke about this before a while ago, but really the one main thing you've ever won at Rangers was the Reserve League. I certainly didn't know that until you told me. Was that quite a special season for you getting to win the Reserve League?
Aye, that was good. Aye, obviously I won like a few tournaments and that when we were young, but in terms of like competitive, like the trophies and that was the first one that probably I think majority of us at my age would have won.
I think the big thing that season, you also signed a new 3-year contract that season with Rangers and obviously made your debut against Ayr United in the Betfred Cup. So that was quite a special season for you all in.
Aye, it was good. Sort of when the manager first came in from that pre-season, it was obviously a lot different because I was sort of in with the first team most days and then got my debut, signed a new contract. So that was probably like when I first felt like it was like professional football, if you know what I mean. You're in about the first team. Obviously, you're still in full time, but when you're with the reserves and the 18s. But that was sort of the first time that I felt that it was kind of real that season.
Was it quite surreal when you get kind of called around and Steven Gerrard standing there as manager of Rangers?
Aye, it was. It probably still is. Somebody with that name that's the manager. But obviously, when you get to work with him, you realise he's just somebody that's came through football the way all the boys or everybody does. So, aye, but it is pretty good to have somebody like that at the club.
One of the questions that somebody sent us in via Twitter, and it was probably a wee bit kind of to do with this season more than that period, but is there anybody in the first team that you look at their style of play and think that you're quite similar to?
I think from if you go back to sort of playing at Ayr and playing in the academy, I was a lot more attacking midfield, so probably like a maybe similar to Arfield. Obviously Davis is a bit different now from when he was first at the club, but the way he played when he was first at the club, sort of, I don't base my game on that, but that's the sort of type of midfielder I like to think I am.
Yeah, because certainly my early memories of you in particular was that you were the kind of more aggressive midfield player, even in that reserve team. You had Cammy Palmer that sat a wee bit deeper, and you were the guy that was always making those runs, trying to get goals, create goals. But I suppose being a midfield player, you've got to be kind of good enough to play in the 6 and 8. So you've obviously got a wee bit of everything in there. Do you think that will help you in the future?
I think so. I think as I got a wee bit older, I always felt I had more to offer playing a bit deeper rather than just being stuck to playing sort of higher up the pitch. But I think you probably just pick it up more as you go along. And then when you go into real football, it's you need to be more than just a number 10 or a
Yeah,
number 6. You sort of need to have a bit of everything, especially in Scotland.
yeah, absolutely. I think in Scotland you do need to have that wee bit of sort of extendability, don't you? You can't just be kind of suckered into one single position or one
Yeah,
single number within the team. You've got to be good enough to kind of move about, especially, when you're playing in a 22, 23 man squad, and you need to have that versatility to be able to drop into different positions.
aye, definitely.
Okay, after that season, was it always the plan to go out and loan that summer, or was that not really something you'd thought about at the time?
Initially coming back, it was never mentioned. Because I went on a sort of sports science program, and that was when like first physically I'd started to improve quite a lot for me. Um, and then the sort of view for me coming back that summer was to just try and impress and get in the squad, but quite quickly the manager just said he felt that I would develop a lot more getting all the games at Ayr like I did than maybe sitting and only getting a couple of games here and there. So obviously looking back at it, as soon as he said that, then it was in my head that that's what I was going to do, because if he's saying that, then you're going to listen.
Yeah.
So initially it wasn't really in my head, but it came about quite quickly.
See that summer, obviously, when that kind of got into your mind, was there any other clubs interested other than Ayr United, or was that really your only option?
That was the main. There was maybe like a few other championship clubs that were sort of thinking about it, but when I had like that one that was sort of nailed on quite early on, then I didn't really see the point in not taking it
Yeah.
up.
So, See that game you played against Ayr United, did you know that you were signing for them after that game, or was that just kind of weird that happened, kind of back to back?
I kind of knew before.
Right.
But obviously after that game, McCall was like, it's a done deal. But he wanted me right away. But it was in the works before that game. But that was just for all the players and all the clubs to come and have a look at would have been the development players at that time.
Yeah, because we kind of heard the rumours obviously before that game that obviously you were potentially going to Ayr United, but then you come on and you scored a hat-trick. So after the game, we were all kind of laughing that, and that'll definitely mean that he's signing for Ayr United after that. And then I think it was like a day or two later, it was all announced that you were going there.
It was
well done pretty quickly, really. I mean, see, looking back at that first spell out in loan, what did you learn about yourself in terms of playing in the Scottish Championship, and what were the kind of standout moments during that season for you?
I think for me, anyway, it sort of taught me how to still be sort of active in games when you've not got all the possession. How can you do a job for the team and affect the game when it's not perfectly suited? So it sort of taught me how to survive in games, if you know what I mean. But that's something that coming through the academy at Rangers, you're like, no disrespect to the other teams, but you're always winning 3-4. You see it every week. So it's something that you don't learn.
Yeah.
So in terms of that sense, it was quite eye-opening on sort of the wee things you need to do and the runs you need to make, the distance, all that stuff. But it was all stuff I sort of knew that you would need to do in football, but you just never really had to do it at the stage I was at, if you know what I mean, before I went there.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing. I mean, I'm not saying that the boys are pampered at the academy, but you're right to an extent. Sometimes it's easy for the 18s or the reserves when they're 2 or 3-0 up, and everything can just kind of coast along. But you watch the Championship, it's combative, it's physical. It feels like the game's just 100 miles an hour the whole time, as though there's never really time to think on the ball. Was that something that you experienced during that season as well?
There was some games I felt we always struggled against Dundee.
Right.
Because they were probably one of the most physical teams in the league, and they were always sort of man for man, and it was just a battle most games we played them. But in terms of like going in and playing, like, because it all happened so quickly, like, you didn't really have time to think. So I was just going in and doing what I had been doing for years. So in that sense, it was perfect just to go straight in and play. I think as soon as I went, I played like four 90 minutes in 2 weeks. Right. In the cup, so it was straight into it, so it was perfect.
Was there a specific goal that season that you'd set yourself in terms of the amount of games you wanted to play or anything like that?
Well, I just wanted to go and play every game. That's what McCall, the manager, that's what he wanted me to do. When I first went in, he says we might have 40 games in a season, 45 games. Your goal is to try and play in them all. He says you might not have the best game, but that's when you learn how to sort of stop your opponent playing, learn how to be effective in games. So like, he had the same sort of view for me as what I had for myself, so it was perfect.
Was it helpful that kind of later on that summer that Jordan Houston joined you at Ayr United, just because it was somebody that you knew from the academy?
I obviously was, by that time obviously you're in the car schools and stuff, so you'd already known all the boys anyway, but it was good to have Houston along as well, because in looking back at that time, it was a successful spell for both of us.
Yeah, I suppose the only downside was it you had to deal with Houstie's dad again, didn't you? Listen to his terrible jokes all the time.
To be fair, that's probably my dad at the games, so I maybe missed him. But aye.
He's some man. I still speak to you every so often when I get the chance. I did say I would go down and try and get to see Jordan play at some point, but obviously with COVID and everything that's happened, it's just not really been possible. So hopefully in the not too distant future, I might get to a game at some point. Looking at that season, just finally at Ayr United, do you have like a special moment that you remember, a special goal or a win that kind of stands out to you that season?
I think the two games are probably Partick away. We won. Was it either 2-1 or 3-2? I think it was 2-1. I scored the winner. and then Inverness and home sort of maybe a month or two before the COVID. We won 1-0 and scored the winner in that, and that was to sort of put us right in keep us right in the mix for the third place. So I think the Inverness game probably was my favourite.
So obviously at the end of that season, you returned to Rangers. Did you know at that point that they were going to offer you a new contract, or was that just something that came out of the blue?
It kind of been sort of started to speak about maybe halfway through the air season, with the manager, and Ross had just come in. He just come into the club at the time, so it'd been sort of spoke about since maybe just before Christmas of that season.
So what was like the sort of summer like? Was that something that you were looking to then make that step up to go out and loan to a Premier League club, or was it maybe like you thought you could maybe go to England? Was there anything like that in your mind?
I'd spoke to the manager and Gary and Ross and Craig as well, and especially the manager and Gary, they wanted me to go into the SPL,
Right.
just because it makes the most sense. It's the league that Rangers play in. So I knew even before we'd come back for that pre-season that I would be going on loan anyway.
I think it's always quite interesting. I mean, I know I'd obviously seen quite a few of the games at Ayr United. So for me, that seemed like the obvious step. Is it just something that when you play for Rangers, you know that you need to show your ability at that level before you're potentially going to get a chance in the first team?
I don't think every single player comes through the academy has to do that. Obviously, it helps. It'll give the manager or whoever the manager is sort of more confidence in putting the young player in. But then at the same time, you could have a player that could get a chance in the first team and go straight in and do well when he's not been at the Championship or been in the SPL. So I think it definitely helps, but I don't think it's a must for every player, but it definitely does help.
Do you think for you, like the experience of now having played in the Scottish Championship and the Scottish Premier League has benefited you more than potentially, staying at Rangers and just being part of the squad?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it gets to a stage where you need to make a career. You need to start getting games. And obviously everybody plays football to play football. Do you know what I mean? Nobody plays football just to train. So I think when I look back at the 2 seasons now, I'm definitely glad that I've done what I've done and went out and got the games and the experience.
What's the biggest differences between the Scottish Championship and the Scottish Premier League in terms of, the physicality or the technical side of the game? What's sort of more different?
I would say, well, in the SPL this year, it's probably it's a lot harder to win games, but obviously Ayr and County were different, sort of ends of the table.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could argue if you were a team higher up the table in the SPL, then you maybe wouldn't think that. But from my experience, I don't think there is a lot in between a lot of the teams.
Right.
So the teams are all at a good level, hard to beat level. So I think a lot of it obviously does depend on who you're playing with, who you're playing against.
I thought that the big question that a lot of people had asked us to ask you was, what was it like moving to Inverness, Dingwall area? What's it like being up there, being so far away from your family and your friends? Is that something you thought about before you went out on loan?
To be fair, again, it sort of happened quite quickly, but because I was going up there with a view to play 30 odd games in the SPL, it didn't really matter to me,
right,
if I was staying, because I knew that's what I had to do. So in my opinion, in my views, these sort of things come secondary for me anyway, when that's what I had to do. So obviously it's not ideal living 3 years away from home, but it sort of is what it is.
Did you know any of the boys in the Ross County dressing room before you went, or was it just a matter of walking in there and getting to know the guys?
I didn't know anybody. Obviously knew a few names and stuff. Played against a few players, but I didn't know MD sort of personally.
Were you surprised when you started doing the training sessions to see how good some of the players were at that level, or did you expect that?
I think when you see a few players sort of older guys like Vigers and Midge, I think they're obviously guys that have got a lot of experience, and they were probably technically, I thought, maybe standouts. But in terms of going from training at Ayr to training at County, I didn't feel there was a massive, in terms of quality, it was very similar, and they're both good in terms of the training and stuff.
And another one of the questions that somebody asked, did you find that you played differently from the previous manager to the new manager at Ross County, or were you still really the same type of player?
I think when I got in at first under the previous manager, Kettlewell, I'd been playing as a six a lot deeper, and obviously that was alien to me. And then so to be doing that in the SPL, it was sort of obviously something I'd never done before at academy level. So to do it in the SPL, it wasn't easy, but at the same time I thought I had some games where I would play well in that position, but I just knew it wasn't natural.
Yeah.
But when the new manager came in, obviously, but the assistants were still there, so I think they've maybe saw me playing that position, and the new manager's all maybe been watching from just being at the games, and he saw me playing that position. So probably wasn't until when the new manager came in, I had a couple of games where I was playing a bit further forward, and then the last 3 games, I felt that it was probably I felt that was what I was going to Ross County to sort of playing that position, box to box. So probably didn't come until later on, but I suppose again that's just learning different positions, different roles in a team as well.
So what's the biggest thing that you'll take away from this season in terms of your mentality and playing at this level? Is there anything in particular that you think that you're better for now that you were at the start of the season?
I think the first 3 months, obviously I don't think I started the game until October. So I think for me just to sort of keep training, keep in the gym, just keep going every day, knowing for the first maybe month or 2 that I wasn't getting in, but I knew at some point I would. So it was just a case of just keeping fit, keeping sharp, training well for that point. So when I got in the team, then it was sort of, it wasn't going to be a shock to my system because I had been training properly for the last 2-3 months. So I think in terms of that sort of test of mentality, and I don't know if every player, if they were in that position, would have sort of come through that, because obviously you're not expected. People don't see that. Do you know what I mean? But I think for me to come through that and get the amount of games I've done, and then obviously staying up at the end of the season, it's been a big achievement for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's probably more frustrating for you, but I was frustrated. I was always expecting to see you starting games. When I thought you went out on loan, I was expecting you to start every game because I'd obviously seen you. I knew the ability you had. I'd always kind of campaigned for you to play for the first team more than maybe going out on loan, but that's just me. But I think maybe some of the Ross County fans maybe didn't get to see the best of you because you were playing that little bit deeper, and maybe they have to see the best of you over a whole season. But under John Hughes, as you said, you moved a little bit higher and you were playing in a more natural position for obviously from what I remember with your time at the academy in the reserves.
Aye.
Is there a standout memory of this season? I know most people will think about beating Celtic at Parkhead in the Cup, but was there anything that really stood out to you this season in terms of a game that you just felt as though I'm at this level now and that that I'm good enough to play here?
I think obviously the 2 Celtic games, especially the one in the Cup, obviously they stand out. But I think when we beat Hibs at Easter Road, I think that was the first win under the new manager. And obviously Hibs are a top team in the league, and obviously the way the whole team played. But I felt like I was at that level. That was the first time I probably felt I can do what I'm good at that level. because I think I was allowed to in the way the game had went, the way we were playing. But I think probably that game, I think that's probably my standout game, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like most people just see anybody that beats Celtic, and if a Rangers youth player's in that or somebody that's out on loan, that's got to be, the standout thing. I mean, clearly you obviously enjoyed winning those games, but I think for a lot of people, they've got to understand there's other games. I mean, like winning those final 2 games of the season probably meant more than maybe beating Celtic at Parkhead in the Cup, for instance.
The last 3 games was obviously Motherwell, Hamilton, and Dundee United. Dundee United away as well. Tannadice very similar to the Hibs game. We just attacked them, and again it was perfect for me to sort of get in more natural positions. But obviously the Celtic game at Parkhead was obviously the pick of the bunch. But in terms of, for me, I think like those sort of games when you're going away to difficult stadiums, that's the ones where you learn, I think.
Yeah, I think that's from a supporter's point of view and for a player's point of view, it's 2 completely different things, isn't it? There's like the exhilaration, the excitement of you winning at Celtic Park and also beating them in the league. But from a player's point of view and a Ross County fan's point of view, the biggest thing this season was obviously staying in the league. And that's what you've obviously done at the end of it. Were you surprised to see that John Hughes had left his position now, or was that maybe something that was going to always happen, do you think?
Unsure, to be honest. The players, nobody had really heard much of what was going to happen. So, obviously, I think it's been announced today, but
yeah,
I didn't really know what would happen going forward.
I suppose like once you leave Ross County, there's probably not a lot of information coming your way now, is there? Because you're kind of back home and you're kind of back doing your own thing. So I suppose it's just one of those things. Like you're a footballer, you move on because you're back at Rangers now. Is that the sort of idea for the summer? Get yourself ready for coming back to the first team?
I obviously back for pre-season, so I just need to get fit, keep myself fit, and just hopefully impress as much as I can.
Is there anything that you're going to work on this summer ahead of getting back to the first team, or is it just a matter of just keep doing what you've been doing for a couple of years?
I think you can always try and do more. Obviously, you can never do enough work, but
yeah.
I think it's obviously been clever as well in the off season. You don't want to go train too much and then you end up worse off. So it's just trying to get a balance of making sure you're in a good shape for coming back.
Yeah. Is there anything that like you're looking for next season? Say, for instance, you do go out and loan. Is it just a matter of then playing more games at a higher level, or is it that you've got like a target in your mind now that you want to get back and be part of the first team?
Well, obviously, in an ideal scenario, obviously I think that's what everybody wants to do, and that's what I've always achieved to do: play games for Rangers, and then obviously further down the line, sort of try and establish yourself in the team. Because obviously when you see we're back to winning trophies, it just looks amazing. Do you know what I mean? From the outside in. So that's something that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, I suppose the only problem you've got as you break into the Rangers first team, there's going to be a lot of ticket requests for certain games during the season. Is that a fear?
Sign strips as well, aye.
Yeah, it's a figure it once you're into the first team, mate. Everybody wants something from you, isn't it? So I suppose that's the good side. But I think for me, it's like, obviously, I've watched you now for maybe kind of 5 years, 6 years. And it kind of feels like this is where you're always going to head towards as the first team. I genuinely hope next season that is the time that we get to see you pull on the first team jersey regularly and we get to see you playing at Ibrox and being part of a successful Rangers team, mate. I hope that really does happen next season.
I will. So do I.
Right, mate, I just want to thank you for coming on. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come on and speak to me. I'll keep in touch over the summer. Hopefully we get the news that you're going to be staying at Rangers and be part of the first team, and I'll send you a message looking for my ticket for Parkhead next season, mate, all right?
Never. Cheers.
Thanks, Stevie. Take care, and thanks
Cheers.
everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Take care, and we'll speak to you again soon. Cheers. Bye.